Hit it good. Hit it, Evan. Hit it good.
Testing. If I could get everyone's attention, please. Let me take this opportunity to welcome everyone to the Tennessee Higher Education Commission winter meeting. It's my pleasure. My name is Evan Cope, and it's my pleasure to welcome everyone here this afternoon. The first order of business is to call on Ms. Carter to call the roll, please.
Mr. Cope.
Here.
Mr. Fisher.
Here.
Secretary Hargett.
Here.
Ms. Hayes.
Here.
Dr. Hayburn. Mr. Kinsey.
Here.
Ms. Coben.
Here.
Here.
Mr. Martin.
Here.
Ms. Martin. Mayor Wharton. Comptroller Wilson.
Thank
We
you.
have a quorum, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Ms. Carter. The next item on the agenda is adoption of the agenda, and I'll entertain a motion for that.
So moved. Second.
All in favor signify so by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. I'll turn the next item over to Dr. Deaton.
Great, thank you, Evan. And first, let me say welcome to everyone for being here today. Had a productive work session this morning and look forward to engaging in further conversations today. I would suggest we move one of the action items up to this spot in the agenda, the selection of the new officers. Particularly a chair and a vice chair. We have, of course, rotated, or not rotated off, our former chairman, Randy Boyd, has a new job as Commissioner of Economic and Community Development, so we are in need of a new chair. So I would entertain a motion to that effect.
Yes, I would like to move that Evan Cope, vacated vice chairman position, be filled with.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Well, congratulations, Mr. Chairman and Mr. Vice Chairman.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Thank you. I appreciate very much your confidence, and it's my pleasure to serve. I'll make a few opening comments here very briefly. First of all, I'd like to congratulate Dr. Russ Deaton on his appointment as the interim executive director. We've worked with, obviously, Russ for a very long time. And everyone who knows Russ and who is familiar with THEC knows and understands that we're in very, very good hands with Dr. Russ Deaton at the helm of this organization. So congratulations to you. At the risk of sounding cliche, I'm going to say it anyway. This is an exciting and critical time in higher education, and I think everyone in this room understands that. We are the beneficiaries and are fortunate to have benefited from the hard work and dedication of Dr. Rhoda and the staff here at THEC, which has placed Tennessee in a position where we're really a model for the nation. And the credit belongs to Dr. Rhoda, and it belongs to our state leadership, the president of the University of Tennessee, chancellor of the Board of Regents, and for all the staff here at THEC. So we come into this sort of new phase in the Higher Education Commission in really, really good shape, thanks to that. We're also obviously extremely fortunate to have a governor with the vision that Governor Haslam has to really promote higher education and promote its evolving role in the economic development of our state. And so, I'm grateful to Governor Haslam for his leadership, as I know that we all are, and look forward to all the exciting policy initiatives that we have in store for us over the next 4 years. As all of you know, I am the parent of 13-year-old twin boys, and so I have mastered the art of changing diapers. So I look forward to this new challenge as chairing THEC, and
Let's try not to do this.
right.
Yeah, we don't have it.
I'm not sure that it's related. I'm sort of thankful I don't have to change diapers here.
Who's first?
And with that said, I'll call on Mike Krause. That's a good segue for that.
Put that in a minute.
Not quite sure how to follow that one, Chairman. But I do thank you for the opportunity. I feel like I get to address the commission, even though I'm no longer a staff member, just as frequently as when I was. And I'm grateful to that, to bring news from the governor's office as to where we are. And really quickly, I want to update you on the Tennessee Promise. and also a little bit about what is next. So last fall, as you know, November 1st, we closed our application. We had 58,082 applicants, so 90% of the senior class applied for Tennessee Promise. And this is kind of just a picture you've seen before of the glide slope of what's ahead for Tennessee Promise. And one of the things I often emphasize, especially in audiences with legislators, is while the Tennessee Promise is tuition free, it is not free. These students have to do things in order to receive the Tennessee Promise. And this is the map of kind of what's ahead. And here's where we are right now. So January 5th, we, along with our partners at Tennessee Achieves, began holding these mandatory meetings. And I know there are many mentors in the room, so you're familiar with this. But these are the meetings where students meet their mentors. These are the meetings where College 101 takes place. We had 380 of these meetings between January 5th up until February 5th, and the credit for that goes solely to Tennessee Achieves and their staff. They are mounting an enormous logistical operation to reach these students. I will just tell you, if you've not been to one of these meetings, it is hard not to walk away with the sense that something bigger is going on than just free college. I was sitting there looking at the high school where I mentor at, and literally hundreds of Tennesseans, adults mentoring, and hundreds of Tennessee students about to receive possibly tuition-free attendance at a community or technical college. That conversation to us is what is the most important thing right now. Because I'll tell you, talking to Dr. White a few minutes ago, that's not a community or technical college conversation even. That's just a college conversation. And there's no other state in the nation with that conversation going on. So this is what's ahead. February 15th, we'll need them to complete a FAFSA. If you are a mentor, please pick up your phone, text your students immediately that February 15th is the deadline. This is a deadline that worries us. The FAFSA is not a simple form to complete, and we want students to begin completing that. If they don't, they'll lose their eligibility for Tennessee Promise. Any questions on Tennessee Promise before we move on to some other initiatives? So what's ahead really is here. And I've said to you before, the peril of Tennessee Promise is that people think the Drive to 55 is Tennessee Promise, and that's not the case. As you'll see here, Tennessee Promise is another initiative among a suite of initiatives. We will change our focus very shortly to focus on adults. We know that there's no way we reach the Drive to 55 just through students graduating high school and entering college as freshmen. We need to reach adults who have never attended college, and we need to reach adults who have some college but left because life happened. These are the suite of initiatives. I'm not going to go through them. I'm just going to tell you two things. One, there are states doing parts of this. There is no state in America doing all of this all at once. This is a remarkable, unified effort to get us to 55. The second thing I would say is there are no initiatives on this slide that THEC is not administering. While we in the governor's office retain leadership, oversight, and project management roles, THEC is the contracting body. In many cases, the program officer for each of these programs is a THEC staff member. So Jessica Gibson, for example, who has kind of changed how Tennessee thinks about adult students, when the governor's office says we want to launch Tennessee Reconnect, what that actually looks like is Jessica Gibson thinking about how do we mobilize to help adults. So there's no project here that moves without THEC, and that's something, one, we want to thank Dr. Deaton and Chairman Cope for the way they give unselfish time, and also Kate Derrick. Kate is the communications officer for Gear Up. That has nothing to do with Drive to 55 in principle, yet she is our communications officer, our de facto marketing expert. So I'm very appreciative to THEC and all of their staff that are helping us continue to move these forward. Any questions? Thank you very much for the time, Dr. Deaton.
Thank you, Mike.
Next point, we have the approval of the minutes, and you should have received those in your packets. And at this time, I'll entertain a motion to approve the minutes.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor signify so by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Next item, I believe, is your report. Yeah. Dr. Deaton?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and again, welcome everyone here to the meeting, presidents and chancellors and special guests. It was a very productive work session this morning, and I'm looking forward to a productive meeting today, and again with the joint meeting with the State Board of Education this afternoon at 3:30. I want to acknowledge a couple of new staff that are with the commission. First is Kurt Johnston, who I think is over my right shoulder. Yes, Kurt, please stand. Kurt is our Director of Education Workforce Alignment. He is coming to us actually in a returning capacity. He was with us a few years ago when he was a grad student at Vanderbilt and was recently at the Research Triangle Institute in North Carolina. He's heading up a lot of our LEAP grant activity and joined us just a few weeks ago. Kurt, we're happy to have you here. Next would be Sam Lemire, who I see back there. Sam just joined us full-time in our Adult Initiatives office and is working with the aforementioned Jessica Gibson and Marianne Rainey on adult student initiatives. Sam is completing our SEC Circle of Staff as an Auburn grad. We had an opening there, so she is that. Sam, thank you for being here. Thank you for joining us today. Both Sam and Kurt have the unfortunate experience of being current and former students of mine, so it's a pleasure to embrace them as colleagues as well as in a professor-student capacity. So, Sam, thank you. Mr. Chairman, if you would indulge me for one moment, I do want to tell a story from this morning. I have a 6-year-old son, my middle son, Grady, and during breakfast he saw my Drive to 55 mug. Of course, I have the full place settings and everything. He noticed the 55% and asked what that was, and so I told him that's what we do here at work. And so then he asked, like any good student of statistics, well, if that's where you're going, what are you at now? And I said, well, Grady, that depends on what assumptions you make with the technical. But I said, we're about at 32, 36% now. We're trying to get to 55%. And he said, well, okay. And then he asked me, after I made him do the math about how far the gap is, he asked me, well, so Daddy, what's your goal today? And I wasn't quite sure what he meant. And I said, well, Grady, it doesn't quite work that way. This is a 2025 goal. So by the time you're a junior in high school, that's when we'll know. But I thought about it and I said, you know what? It exactly does work the way he asked me, which is that every day we're building a wall and a foundation for the Drive to 55. And that occurs here at THEC, at the Board of Regents in UT, at the Department of Labor, ECD, the Department of Education, the Board of Education, most importantly in classrooms across the K-12 and higher ed schools across our state. Day by day, we hope to make progress on that so that 10 years from now, we wake up and we've gotten to that goal. And so Grady's a special young boy to me, and that moment was special professionally and personally this morning for me. Let me, as part of my report now, actually pass the baton to two folks from the THEC staff. The Tennessee Student Assistance Corporation. Diane Lejean and Tim Phelps are going to talk to you a bit about how THEC helps support the Drive to 55, some of the programmatic efforts that are underway there. This is a part of the family of operations that we don't, in the THEC side, talk about as much as we should. But as Mike said, it's central to the support network that's in place now for the Drive to 55 and many of the support networks and outreach efforts and grant operations that we're engaged in for students and for institutions. With that, I guess, Tim, you're going first. I will hand the mic to you, Tim.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the Commission, and Dr. Deaton. I will say that, Russ, my breakfast conversations with my children are about Captain Crunch and usually not building foundations, and so I applaud you. But like Dr. Deaton said, he asked us to take a few minutes to share with you THEC's role in the Tennessee Promise program. And for those of you that don't know me, my name is Tim Phelps. I oversee the Grants and Scholarships Division with THEC. Just a little bit about the THEC Grants and Scholarships Division. We have 11 staff members. We administer 20 programs, and that makes essentially we disperse funds to about 135,000 students each year, totaling about $370 million. And that doesn't include the Tennessee Promise at this point, or the Tennessee Reconnect programs that obviously we'll soon be adding. So as it relates to Tennessee Promise, the Grants and Scholarships Division, we've worked with obviously Mike Krause, THEC, the Governor's Office, the partnering organizations, in developing the application for the students. So that allowed those 58,000 students that we mentioned earlier to apply for the program. It's very much been a collaborative process. During the application period as well, we worked with Diane and her staff on providing reports to the high schools to let them know which of their students had completed the Tennessee Promise application. We also worked on providing files and reports to the colleges and the institutions essentially the colleges would be able to take those students from Tennessee Promise applicants and turn those into admitted students. You may remember that most of the community colleges had an application day, if you will, where the students could come and apply for admittance to the institution. So moving forward, we will be obviously serving as the administrative agency for the Tennessee Promise. We've essentially moved into phase 2 of the process, where we will start working on the reporting processes, the payment processes that will essentially make the processes happen to where we'll be able to send funds to the institution on behalf of the students, so that we can get the students paid and make sure that all our obligations are met. So, and I'll turn it over to Diane.
My name is Diane Lejean, and I'm the Associate Executive Director for the Communication Services Department at THEC. We have 13 staff members located in 7 regions across the state of Tennessee, and we support all of the same programs that Tim's staff administers. I'd like to provide a very brief update regarding our activity as it relates to the Tennessee Promise Scholarship Program specifically. Between August 15th and November 1st of this last fall, in support of the new scholarship, we have delivered 200,000 push cards personally to every private and public high school in the state of Tennessee. We did this in a 3-week period at the beginning of September. This represents 1 card for every student and 1 card for their parents. Now, we typically visit the high schools, each of the high schools in the fall, each semester. But this year, because of the Tennessee Promise Scholarship Program, we made 2 visits to promote this program. Additionally, we made financial aid presentations at all Tennessee high school guidance counselor trainings for the Tennessee Promise on the campuses of the state's 13 community colleges. We hosted 45 new events this year. We call them Tennessee Promise Application Workshops. We conducted these at all high schools that requested one. We participated in the Scholarship Saturday event at the Tennessee Community Colleges on Saturday, September 20th. As well, we were involved with the Saturday event for the 27 TCATs hosted on October 18th. Our call center staff of 4 individuals handled an increased workload over that time period, taking nearly 12,000 additional calls and over 900 live chat conversations, all specifically about the Tennessee Promise Scholarship. We had 15 Communication Services grants and scholarships and 1 Gear Up staff member here to man the phones on the Tennessee Promise Scholarship deadline of Saturday, November 1st from 8 a.m. until 11 o'clock p.m. And we took 252 calls from Tennessee seniors and their parents on that one day. In our effort to remain in the top 5 states with the highest FAFSA completion rate in the United States, we are currently coordinating over 200 College School Tennessee and FAFSA workshop events between January 1st and February 15th. You'll note that was the deadline that the students have to have their FAFSA completed by. As well, our outreach director has also presented on behalf of Tennessee Achieves and Gear Up 3 live FAFSA completion online webinars for nearly 500 of the Tennessee Promise mentors. As you can see, TSAC is on the front line of seeing that the Tennessee Promise Scholarship Program has an effective launch across the state this year. As Mike pointed out, this program is an important component to the success of the Drive to 55 initiative. Do you have any questions?
Questions for? Thank you both. If there were a singular state metric for financial literacy among high school students, I think we would be at or near the top, and that is a tribute to Tim, his staff, Diane, her staff, to Mike and folks, really educating Tennesseans about higher ed finances. That's part of what gives us one of the best FAFSA completion rates in the country, one of the lowest debt levels in the country. It aligns with the work that Jane Pennington and her staff do in the loan division. It's to be commended, and I applaud each of them for that. To move on, Mr. Chairman, if I may, is David Wright, are you here? There you go, right there. David, if you could give us an update perhaps on the master plan and where that's going.
Yeah, well, that's why I was late getting back. But anyway, we're doing a lot of mathematical calculations and trying to make sure those are as accurate as possible right now, and appreciate Dennis and Tristan spending some time with us over lunch. Once that is ready for prime time, we want to meet with the system leadership to talk about the breakouts for each system and if they're interested in arriving at such for their institutions where, given certain assumptions, where you need to be by 2025 by institution. And then there are a whole lot of conversations that would follow from that about what kinds of degrees and all, and that's their job. But so once that's done, Dennis, and we've been meeting during his week here, a few days here about sort of broad themes. We're not where we were 5 years ago or 10 years ago, where the playing field of the master plan is a blank slate. It's wide open. The big ideas are pretty much, they're set, but there's a lot of room for what do we do given what we've done so far, and now that we have reached this level of attainment, what are sort of the more refined questions that we can ask. I have a list of members to invite to take part in those discussions. And so in the next week, we'll be sending out those invitations, sharing with them our projections. Nope, I'm going to wait till I get back from John and Joe on that, but sharing with them sort of our broad outline and get input from them during our first conference call about what's in here that you like, don't like, what do we need to add, and sort of build from there. So been doing a lot of work on it for the last 6 weeks, but now it's going to become more out in the open and collaborative as it should be. So this board will endorse the plan and the new formula in its July meeting, so we've got about a 5-month window to complete all the work.
And as a footnote to that, before I turn it back over to you, Mr. Chairman, both the funding formula and performance funding led by Betty Dandridge Johnson are undergoing similar reviews top to bottom to align with the master plan, refresh those two finance policies. All that's occurring over the next 6 months. Mr. Chairman, that concludes my report.
Thank you, Dr. Deaton. Next, we'll turn to Dr. DiPietro for the system report, ET system report.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the Commission. It's a pleasure to be with you again today. I'll be relatively brief. Last time we got together, I talked to you about our initiative around our business model and the fact that we felt that the business model that we currently exist under at the University of Tennessee is unsustainable / broken. It doesn't mean we're not solvent. It doesn't mean that our audits aren't coming home the way they ought to. It's really about the issue of continuing to pass tuition increases on in order to pay our additional costs each year of operating, given the state's tough financial shape. We continue to do that with a group of people that we've called the Budget Advisory Group. The acronym is BAG. It's the President's Budget Advisory Group, but I told Keith Carver I didn't want to use the P in it, in the acronym. And, we've had several articles across the state about the initiative and editorials in support of the notion of the fact that we've identified this as an issue. We own the problem ourselves, and we are trying to figure out how we're going to fix it in our own house. In tandem with that, should revenue improve and the state's economy keeps chugging along positively and there are monies available, we hope that the state will continue to help us, and I'm confident that'll happen. We've done interviews on TV and radio in order to get the message out, and I believe we're getting positive response. And the other part of this is I plan on going to the board with a 2-year plan in February to gain some perspective from the entire Board of Trustees about the approach. And what we're putting together right now is a set of boundary documents, what we're calling it, that put in place what our crystal ball says is our best prediction of what we might end up having to deal with over the next 2 budget cycles, this year and next. So we'll keep working on that. We'll continue to work with the Budget Advisory Group, and we'll keep you advised. And we're eager, obviously, to hear the governor's State of the State address and what comes forth in that regarding the budget. Most of you probably read the coverage of President Obama coming to East Tennessee and being at Pellissippi State and John's system, and out at Clinton in regard to UTK, particularly in Oak Ridge National Lab. And that day was a red letter day in a lot of ways. We've now cooperated with Battelle, Oak Ridge National Lab at the University of Tennessee for 15 years, and we've just been renewed. But really the cherry on the sundae is this award that we got a few weeks ago, a couple of weeks ago. And it's actually a hub. It's a manufacturing hub that the federal government put together from the standpoint of a funding source. It's a $259 million grant. It's the largest grant that the University of Tennessee Knoxville has ever received. And in large part, I don't believe we would have ever been able to arrive at this without the relationship with the lab. The partnership with the lab has really grown over the last particularly 6 to 7 years. There are educational programs now associated with the Bredesen Center with postgraduate as well as doctoral students who are training at the lab and gaining credentials and or postdoctoral experience with our people at the university. But then this research project is a big one because it has 122 members. It includes state support from 7 states. The corridor is essentially up I-75. If you drive from Knoxville north, all those states between Knoxville and Detroit are included in this hub, and those states, including our own, from the economic development folks, have received support for this project. As well as there are a number of private sector partners who are in the business around composites, plastics. You may have seen the car that was manufactured or essentially printed as a result of the kind of research that's been done between the material science people at Knoxville and the Oak Ridge National Lab. Now, I don't really think, I went to the event, and I don't really think we're going to be in the business of printing a whole car. But you might think of the concept this way. With the technology on board with a modern-day vehicle, they're computers, right? And it could indicate to via satellite or cell service that you have a component going bad. And instead of having a bunch of those components, whatever part that might be, on a shelf, instead it will actually tell somebody who has a 3D printer, you're going to need this part. You indicate through the car that you're going to need the part. You want it repaired. And they don't have a bunch of parts on the shelf. They just print it out, and it's at your car dealership, and your car's repaired. And additive manufacturing is what this is all about. And so it's a process that's very environmentally safe and sustainable from the standpoint of waste materials. And we're actually looking at carbon fiber materials that have a lot of lift because they're made out of renewable resources, largely out of lignin, as a sidebar to the Tennessee Biofuels Initiative. So this is tapping into what we think it will be for Tennessee, a manufacturing resurgence, especially in the automotive sector where we already have a lot of interest. The institute is actually called the Institute for Advanced Composite Manufacturing Innovation, or IACME is the acronym. And currently what the problem is the concepts are great, but affordability is an issue. And so we need to become more effective and efficient in the process. We think that's the ultimate outcome of this big hub. We're very excited about it. And it's a great opportunity not only for us to provide solutions that improve Tennessee economically, but also what it does for faculty research programs and graduate student research as well. In addition, we're proud of 3 institutions in our system that earned the Carnegie Community Engagement Classification. It recognizes collaboration with community organizations and partners. UT Chattanooga was the first institution in 2008. It won that award or that recognition again in 2015. Knoxville and the Institute of Agriculture have partnered on an application, and they've just received the same sort of recognition. It makes UT Knoxville one of the only 52 universities with both the very high intensity research classification and the engaged status classification. And because I'm a child of the land grant mission, it gives me great satisfaction to see that happen, because great land grant institutions are really engaged in the business of providing information that improves life for its citizens, as well as educational programming. So we're really happy about that. We've got some really good news last week out of Memphis regarding tech transfer. There's a startup company called the Hubble Telemedicine. It largely can, at distance, diagnose issues with your eyes around diabetic retinopathy. And so you're, instead of having to go to an ophthalmologist if you're in a rural county of the state, you can go to your general practitioner, go to your family medicine person. They can, if they have the right equipment, they can get a picture of your retina. They can send it in via email or the web, and then there can be an assessment of whether you have a problem or not. So because ophthalmologists are infrequent in our state, particularly in rural areas, it gives those people who are suffering from retinopathy that could cause blindness a chance to keep them healthy and well. This telemedical technology, the Hubble, was acquired by Welch Allen, and we're obviously happy about that. We're in the last phases of a search for a new vice president for development at our system level, and this would also be the president of the University of Tennessee Foundation. We think we may have an announcement sometime in the next 10 days to 2 weeks, and we hope for an appointment by our board in approval of an appointment for at our board in February. The 4 finalists were very strong, and it's very important to us from the standpoint of fundraising. And hats go off to Lofton Stewart, who's a son of Brownsville, Sharon, and been around the University of Tennessee a long time, who's served in an interim capacity and done an outstanding job. We have not missed a lick when it comes to our fundraising efforts with Lofton at the helm. A couple last things. We've had a Kiplinger rating of being a top 100 institution at Knoxville for standpoint of cost, total cost of attendance, and we're happy about that. And we participated this week in the summit on prevention of sexual assault on campus that was held here in Nashville. It was a partnership with John's team, with Claude Presnell's team, with some non-for-profits, and within our house, Katie High, Matthew Scoggins. There was a whole host of people who helped get that organized. It was really an event to start to train the trainers. It was just coincidental that it happened at the same time frame that the ruling came out of the case at Vanderbilt. But really what happened was, it's a good example of how we collaborate. So at last October, there were a lot of regulations that came out from the Department of Education, not Energy, that said there are all these issues you have to comply with changes in federal law. And we took them very seriously, and Katie started a conversation with people at TBR. The next thing we knew, they were already planning this event. They had planned the event. We felt it was important to get a leg up on saying Tennessee's aware, and we're training people, and it's also about awareness. It was a great event, got lots of coverage, and I'll leave the rest of the story about it to John. Great things are happening at our university every day. When I have a tough day, I just think about all the great things that are happening. I don't have a tough day very often. It's still a great privilege to have the job. I'm pleased to give you a report, Mr. Chairman and Commissioners, and I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Questions for Dr. DiPietro? Thank you very much for your report. Chancellor Morgan?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Some of you may know this, but Evan's grandfather and my father were contemporaries, worked together, and my father was Commissioner of Education, followed his grandfather in that role, and also then as a college president. So it's good that the Copes and the Morgans are showing around.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
I'll kind of pick up where Joe left off, and that is with the summit. And I won't take a long time about this, but it really did represent, I think, an extraordinary an event in that TACUA, University of Tennessee, Tennessee Board of Regents, we sometimes are a little bit competitive, but when it's important, I think we're all focused on the same mission, and that's serving the state of Tennessee and the higher education needs of the state of Tennessee. And this was a great example, and as Claude said yesterday, one of the interviews we were doing, that really this will become, I think, a pattern of future cooperation. Really does create some synergy across our systems to take advantage of each other, learn from each other, because at the end of the day, our missions really are the same. It was a great event. I was able to attend part of it, and the part I attended, I can tell you I came away with a much better understanding and appreciation of the issues, how those issues have to be dealt with. I think, as Joe said, the kind of the local case certainly heightened the emphasis and the understanding of why we have to deal with this problem on our campuses. and it was a great event. Diane Birdie from Takua, along with the folks Joe mentioned, Heather Stewart, Heidi Lemming, Monica Greppin from our shop, spent a lot of time working on that. It was a very good event. Joe also mentioned the fact that the president was here. We were excited to have him host him at Pellissippi. It was a great day. I think it's a great credit to the governor, his foresight, his creativity. Mike, I guess, is not still with us, but it was all that portion of the day was all about Tennessee Promise and how it can serve as a national model for community college access and availability across the country. Also, since our last meeting in December, there was the second White House Summit on higher education. Joe participated in that, as did Jimmy Cheek, but also Tristan Denley from our shop was there and led one of the breakout sessions at that. So Tennessee continues to be recognized, I think, on a national scale, at a national level, of the things that we are doing here across all of our systems, public and private, to try to promote the idea of education, attainment, and college completion. A couple other things I'll mention, and then talk specifically about some things at our institutions. We did on December 8th break ground out in Smyrna for a joint facility with Nissan, Tennessee College of Applied Technology, Murfreesboro, and Nissan Manufacturing USA will jointly develop and occupy a state-of-the-art training center for advanced manufacturing and related kinds of programming. Nissan will use roughly half the facility, but we'll use the other half for our TCAP programs. What is unique about this is the public-private partnership aspect of it. We will be able to train our students who are not Nissan or not anticipated to be Nissan employees using their very advanced robotics. They will be able to train their employees using our machine tool capabilities, as well as the other programs that we'll offer on that site, and share the expenses of the building on a going forward basis. It represents, I think, the kind of project that we're going to see more of over the coming years, because none of us alone can afford to do what needs to be done, but working cooperatively, we can make those things happen. Joe mentioned the work that's being done at University of Tennessee around the issue of the sustainability of the business model. We're very much into that conversation at Tennessee Board of Regents as well. We held a retreat on December 10th, which was a day before our board meeting. Joe was there. As I was invited, I participated in theirs. And the sense is very much the same. We can't keep doing what we're doing if we expect to meet the state's goals for education, attainment, and workforce development. So we're very much about the business of enjoying the fact that UT is a little bit ahead of us. So whatever ideas that they surface that seem to be acceptable, we'll co-opt those.
You can learn from our mistakes.
That's right. And the ones that aren't acceptable, we'll stay away from. Yeah. So it's going to work out just fine for us, I think. But I think Joe's gap if you assume 3% increase in tuition, roughly a 3% inflation rate, and zero additional state dollars over a 10-year period, UT's problem is about $155 million, as I recall. Ours is about $365 when you just take that across our whole system. So it's very real. The board was very quick to understand that. And you will see us, I think, in the coming months also really pursuing some specific kinds of strategies that will help us get that into balance. The difficulty, and I think Joe would agree with this, if all we had to do is get by with what we are now, we could probably figure out ways to get by. But as we have talked this morning, as we will talk this afternoon, the challenge for us is not to just keep doing what we're doing, it's to do a lot more than we have done in the past. So being able to deliver more, produce more with limited resources really does create a very real challenge for us. as do kind of the continued departures and presidents and the seeking of folks to fill those roles. I think I've told you before, ever since I've been chancellor, and that's about almost 4.5 years now, we've been involved in at least one search. Well, I'm here to tell you we're involved in 3 searches right now. We have Chattanooga State, Dr. Catanzaro retired effective December 31st. Nate Essex at Southwest Community College in Memphis is retiring at June 30, as is Mary Lou Apple at Motlow State, retiring at June 30. We had our first search committee meeting earlier this week for Southwest. 2 weeks, I think, we will do our first search committee meeting for Chattanooga, and then soon thereafter for Motlow. For the first time, we're using search firm for the Chattanooga Southwest. I say for the first time in our community college setting. This time, I don't think we're going to use them for Motlow, but we're really seeking largest possible pool. We think that Motlow will benefit from the fact that we're developing a pool for Southwest and Chattanooga, so we'll have kind of a good idea about talent that's out there that it's interesting in coming to Tennessee. But I'll keep you apprised of those processes as we go forward. A couple things real briefly, and I promise, Mr. Chairman. Roane State, we had 2 professors, 2 of our faculty members at Roane State that have now set a world record for living underwater. Interestingly, 2 of our professors surfaced last month and celebrated the end of their mission. I thought you'd like that. To educate public about ocean conservation, to inspire young people's interest in science, to make history. Biology professor Bruce Cantrell and adjunct professor Jessica Fain spent the fall living and working in the Jules Undersea Lodge, which is an underwater habitat at Key Largo. They stayed underwater for 73 days, 2 hours and 34 minutes, breaking the world record for the longest time spent. But what's really important is incredible attention, both to Roane State as an institution, but also to the idea that a landlocked community college could have a role in ocean whatever, big water, bodies of water, studies.
Oceanography.
Yeah, oceanography. And internet. No, that's good. International, really international attention. It was really quite phenomenal. And at TSU, a little closer to home, Dr. Vin Tiravidi is an assistant professor of biological science in our College of Agriculture, Human and Natural Sciences. And he has been working with a group of researchers from Washington University School of Medicine on an experimental vaccine for breast cancer. And frankly, the early stage investigation is very positive. It's proven to be safe and appears to be efficacious in terms of treating breast cancer. 50% of the patients that were receiving the treatment showed no signs of progression after a year compared to 20% of control group. So we're quite excited about the potential. Still a lot of work to do, a lot of years before something like that gets to the market, but a very significant development. Vol State, some of you know about the ratemyprofessors.com, where you can go out and rate professors. Turns out Vol State is 21 out of 8,000 community colleges across the country in terms of rating of satisfaction, both in terms of faculty as well as campus environment. For the second year in a row that they have been in the top 25. Tennessee Tech, junior chemistry major Kelsey Richards of Gallatin is one of 16 students across the country that received the Leadership Award from the American Chemical Society. University of Memphis, President Raines' RN to BSN program was named one of the best online classroom experiences by RN to BSN.org. And that's based on a wide range of sources, including accreditation, commitment to online education, academic career counseling, and so forth. And then at ETSU, I'll conclude, Melinda Gaines and Mark Stevens were recently selected by our SREB, the State Doctoral Scholars Program. That's a program really designed to try to increase production of PhDs among minorities that have the intent of teaching on college campuses. So they're both in School of Public Health and specialize in epidemiology. So a lot of good stuff going on in our system, across our system, and that is my report. Thank you.
Chancellor Morgan, get the report. Any questions? Chancellor Morgan.
Chairman.
Yes, sir.
I've like to let the commission know that I have to leave early to go to a dedication of the library at UTC. We're very pleased that the state allocated those resources, and it's come to fruition. We will be leaving shortly after 2 o'clock.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, we'll move on to our action items. And the first action item for consideration is item 1B, the approval of new academic degree program at Middle Tennessee State University. And I will call on Ms. Betty Dandridge Johnson.
Thank you, and good afternoon. MTSU proposes to offer a Master of Science degree in finance that will prepare graduates to work in the growing field of finance and prepare them for careers in financial planning, investment banking, and financial analysis. The demand for this program is clearly needed, with the national demand for financial advisors expected to increase by 27%. Also, the Tennessee Department of Labor has identified financial analysts as the 6th highest paying job. Also, this morning, during our work session, Emily House's presentation also identified this as an emerging area. MTSU received numerous requests to develop this program, especially given the lack of a finance Master's of Science program at a public university in the state. Students will have the opportunity to complete the 33-hour curriculum, and the program will emphasize communication skills, critical thinking, analytical, and most important, ethical decision-making skills. The program will involve faculty from the Department of Economics and Finance. Members of the finance faculty have served as consultants to banks, insurance companies, and nonprofit organizations that will benefit students in the program. Students will also take classes in a state-of-the-art Bloomberg stock trading classroom. The proposed program is designed to be completed in 3 semesters for full-time students and 6 semesters for part-time students. MTSU projects close to 70 graduates by the end of the monitoring period, and the program will be funded solely through the additional tuition revenues that will be generated from these students. The finance program will require 2 additional full-time faculty members, and they're planning to hire these faculty during the 1st and the 3rd year of the program. The program will also be assessed with their upcoming reaffirmation from the American Association of Colleges of Schools of Business, and that will occur in 2016. MTSU proposes to offer this Finance MS program that will allow graduates to advance in careers and earn certification in various financial areas. This program does align with MTSU's mission, and it also addresses the state's need for increasing the number of graduate degrees. This program will join the other 32 finance Masters of Science programs in the nation and will be the only public university in Tennessee offering such a program. The program was reviewed by the external reviewer from the University of California at Riverside, and he noted many program strengths, but he really emphasized the faculty credentials. This program was approved by the Board of Regents at their December board meeting, and the THEC staff recommends approval of the Finance Masters of Science program at Middle Tennessee State University. I'll be pleased to answer questions.
Questions? If not, I'll entertain a motion for approval.
So moved.
Have a second?
Second.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Next item on the agenda is also, Ms. Johnson, policy revisions.
Thank you. THEC has really been extremely busy last year, involved in a number of policy initiatives, and I just really want to take this opportunity to really thank a lot of people for their involvement in this process, especially the Board of Regents and the University of Tennessee, Dr. Tristan Dilley and Dr. Katie High, the staff here at THEC, and Courtney Lenartz Our graduate assistant was very helpful in terms of reviewing best practices from other states. And also, appreciation is extended to Scott Sloan and his staff, because we want to be sure that anything that we propose definitely has legal basis to it. So I just really just wanted to just take this time to say thank you to everyone. But the mortuarium that was established last July really provided an opportunity for us to carefully review the policies surrounding academic program approval process. This pause from new program proposals allowed THEC to reflect on current practices and propose policy revisions to expedite the approval process. The review of the policies was also aligned with the Drive to 55 goal to ensure that there would be high-quality academic program offerings. With this policy, with the A10 for new academic programs, the major change with this policy was to grant the THEC Executive Director the approval authority to approve new academic units. And what I mean by new academic units will involve divisions, colleges, schools, and departments. And then there were also revised changes regarding the name of the process. We've been referring to this as the letter of intent. On campuses is the LOI, and it's really a letter of application which would be aligned with the governing board policy. There were other minor things, but these were the two major changes to the policy, and we recommend approval of this policy today.
Thank you. Any questions for Ms. Johnson?
How long does it take currently to get this? I understand the impetus behind this is to streamline the process and make it quicker. Is that an onerous journey now to get?
Currently, for the administrative units, we have not been doing this. This has been solely at the governing board level, and we recognize in statute that we were required to do this. And so now we are requesting that this be done, but it be done, and the approval will be by the executive director, by Dr. Deaton.
Additional question? I'll entertain a motion.
Moved.
Approved. Do we have a second? I have a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Next item on the agenda, Ms. Johnson, do you have A1A.1?
Yes, like I say, it's been a busy year. The next policy is A1.1, which is new and modified academic programs evaluation criteria. And these revisions would provide a more efficient approval process for modified academic program approvals, and also will be granting power of that approval to the THEC Executive Director. There have been several examples of academic program modifications that were approved by the Commission, but would have been appropriate for the Executive Director to approve in order to save time and resources of the Commission. If you all recall, there are three areas in which we're classifying modifications. One is change in degree designation due to significant curriculum. And for example, at the July 2013 meeting, the Commission approved UT Knoxville's Creative Masters of Arts program. That was really just a shift from going from a Masters of Arts to a Masters of Fine Arts. So that was one example. The other is a change in degree designation or concentration based on a recommendation from an accrediting agency. And the example here is that at East Tennessee State University, the National Association of Schools of Arts recommended that the graphic design concentration be considered as a standalone program. So that was that example. And then the other one is separate a concentration from an existing program. Currently, the THEC staff is reviewing a Master of Library Science program from Middle Tennessee State University. This program is already, it already exists within the Masters of Education within Administration and Supervision. And so we're proposing that those types of modifications then be approved rather than coming forth here at the Commission in order to expedite the process, that they be approved by the executive director. Also, there is revision in the policy that provides an option to elevate these modifications to the new program approval stage if necessary, because we may not be 100% certain, so therefore that language is there to give us that leeway that if it is necessary for the modification to go to the new program approval stage, then it would be considered. It would be considered by the commission. The other revisions to the policy involved enhancements to the evaluation criteria. One is that we would be requiring all program proposals to be evaluated by an external reviewer. Currently, only the graduate programs are externally reviewed. In response to Ms. Coben's question during the work session this morning, we do have criteria in the policy that focuses on future demands for jobs. And then that way, the institution will be required to address employer demand and need beyond the anticipated date of graduation of the first program graduates. There's also a marketing recruitment plan that will be required that should facilitate successful program implementation. We found that to be lacking. Other states were doing that, and we also feel that by incorporating this, that hopefully we'll see that that program implementation will be successful. And then the final change would expanding the monitoring of doctoral programs from 5 years to 7 years. And that's in relation to, we discovered that with the National Science Foundation research, that the average time to degree completion for doctoral programs is roughly about 7 years. So that additional time is needed. So THEC staff recommends approval of this policy on new and modified academic programs. Questions?
Questions?
One comment, Mr. Chairman, and to your question, Keith, that this second policy is probably more germane to what you were asking earlier about the streamlining. I hope it does.
One presentation too soon.
Yes, you
for my
were
question.
actually.
Thank you.
Skating where the puck is going. That's where
Okay,
we like to
thank
see. And two things, and Betty's mentioned this, the moratorium we've had really allowed us to hit the pause button and reflect upon these two policies. And as she said, applause to the systems for helping us think through how better to structure the program approval process and to incorporate policy revisions like this that will hopefully allow for a more streamlined process. So it's been a very productive year.
Good. Thanks, Dr. Deaton. Any questions for Ms. Johnson or other comments? Being none, I'll entertain a motion.
Move approval.
Do we have a second? Second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Ms. Johnson. I think that's the end of your business. Is that right, for action items?
For action items.
That's right. Yeah, we've got some information items later. All right, next on the agenda is item D, 1 and 2, post-secondary education authorization. Dr. Stephanie Beller-Chase.
Thank you, Chairman Cope, members of the commission. Good afternoon. Earlier at the work session today, we kind of did an overview of what we do and the guiding principles, laws, and rules that help us make the decisions that we make. Also, we went over some statistics about the institutions, their placement rates, their withdrawal rates, and some statistics on the students and some demographics. So I'm sure that PowerPoint is going to be available on the website. Anybody interested? If you have a question beyond that, you can always feel free to contact me. So I have one action item for your consideration today. The Committee on Post-Secondary Educational Institutions recommends that the institutions listed in Section 1D1 and the new programs listed in Section 1D2 be given temporary approval and temporary authorization and approval, respectively. And just to note that the agenda was sent to all the UT and TBR presidents. That's something that we need to do. We had to do it, was put in statute. So 30 days before our meeting, we send the agenda out to all the presidents so that they have any concerns or questions, we will address them appropriately. And there were no questions this time.
Thank you, Dr. Chase. Any questions or comments for Dr. Chase?
Move approval of the item.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Do we have a second? Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you very much. Next, we'll call on Dr. Deaton for the October 31 revised budgets.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll ask Crystal Collins to give us a brief update on those and a recap of the morning work session discussion.
Thank you, Dr. Deaton, Mr. Chairman, members of the Commission. Earlier this morning, we did a more detailed overview of the 2014 revised operating budgets. All of our higher education institutions are required by the General Appropriations Act to submit their operating budgets twice a year, the July 1 budget and the October 31 budget. This morning, we covered the revised or October 31 budgets for 14-15. All of our operating budgets are balanced. Overall revenue was about $3.12 billion. This is up from last year and represents our second year of having revenue above $3 billion. Campuses continue to devote the majority of their resources to the teaching functions on campus. They expended about $3.2 billion overall, and about 60% of that was attributable to the teaching function. Expenditures for auxiliary enterprises have not exceeded revenues plus unallocated auxiliary fund balances, so those budgets balance as well. All of our higher education entities have submitted these required financial data to the Commission, and as such, we request that the Commission approve the 14-15 revised operating budgets with the authority to transmit them to the Finance and Administration for review.
Very much. Any questions on this item? Hearing none, I'll call for a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that the Commission approve the FY 14-15 October 31 revised operating budgets, authorize the Executive Director to make appropriate technical adjustments if necessary, and transmit the revised operating budgets with the Commission's action and comments to the Department of Finance and Administration for their review and approval.
Thank you very much, Commissioner. Do I hear a second? Second. All in favor signify so by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. That concludes the action item portion of our agenda. We now move on for the information items. Item 2A is Drive to 55, Support and Capacity Building. Mr. Troy Grant.
Mr. Chairman, while they're coming up to the podium, this is my chance for redemption after cruelly cutting them off right before lunch as they were on the cusp of asking you the intriguing questions. We will pick up where we left off. So, Troy, Jessica, the floor is yours.
No pressure at all after that. Yes. So, Mr. Chairman, Dr. Deaton, members of the Commission, thanks so much for your time. We won't go over everything that we talked about this morning, but we will zero in on, again, the Drive to 55. The Drive to 55 is obviously a catalyst to the work that we do around access and success with our individual populations. Just to hit back on, before we go to the questions, the three initiatives that we are rolling out in the coming weeks. A student success course. Again, the student success course is designed to provide students with information and skills needed to successfully enroll and succeed in higher education. The content of the course was developed in partnership with the Tennessee Board of Regents, the Tennessee Student Assistance, or excuse me, the Tennessee College Access and Success Network, and the Governor's Office, along with faculty from across the state who really did contribute to what they are teaching in that really Success 101 class that's being taught at many of our institutions across the state. The idea basically is to take that content, bring it down to the high school level so that we can begin equipping those students with that information much earlier. We are in the middle of a pilot. We selected last week our 15 schools across the state. 349 students will be engaging into this content. Mary Lappin is our staff member who is overseeing that work. Again, partnering with TBR, we're running this pilot on the D2L platform that TBR runs on the RODP division. So schools are asked to provide students with at least 2 hours per week. This will be really an intent in the classroom experience. So the course is designed so that students can do it on their own time, but where we are piloting it, it's really going to be embedded within the classroom instruction at the high school level, which we think will result in higher levels of participation. The next piece is, this is using College Access Challenge Grant funds. We are going to be subgranting funds, $500,000 in funds actually, to community colleges focused on providing services to Tennessee Promise students. So again, $500,000 from CACG. A call for proposals will be released in February. The lead applicant will be community colleges, but we were asking that those colleges partner with the partnering organizations that are implementing the Tennessee Promise. So we really want this to be a stitching together of the Tennessee Promise along with the retention efforts that are happening at the community college level. Proposals must be based on research around retention and best practices, and the idea is to identify best practices that then could be scaled across the state. So these are the two initiatives coming out of the Office of P16 Initiatives. With that, I'll turn it over to Jessica.
Thank you. As I mentioned in the work session, we will be releasing an RFP for Ready to Reconnect grants in February. The grants will, of course, be used to provide assistance to institutions to improve practices, policies, and internal operations to support adult learner success. We have $500,000 available from the College Access Challenge Grant. As I mentioned, I don't know how many of the grants we will be awarding and the size of them. They will be small grants, but it's really going to depend on how many applicants we have. The application process is really a two-part process in which institutions first commit to and then complete the adult learner-focused institution evaluation. And from that evaluation, they will get results based on strengths and weaknesses in 9 different areas, and then the grants will be awarded based on their plans to focus in on one of their more challenging areas. What I didn't mention before was the timeline. So there are some institutions in Tennessee that have gone through the ALFE process. They will automatically be eligible. Those who have not gone through the process but want to will have some time to do it. So we will have some informational webinars in February on the process and on the grant program itself. And then there will be a period of a few months, probably till early to mid-May, where they can finish up the ALFE process. And then they'll have a month to write a proposal and present it to us for us to review. So we left off talking about how the presentation was really focused on THEC as a policy entity, a strategic partner, and a capacity builder. And we had some questions that we wanted to present to the Commission. And so now we have an opportunity to do so. And I'm just going to start off with one, and please jump in, Troy. So we've had some internal discussions here about how efforts around the Drive to 55 and other associated projects and initiatives that we're working on really can be successful only if there is community ownership. And this goes beyond the institution. This goes to the community level, whether it's local government or local nonprofits and organizations. So the question to the Commission members is, how can we at THEC engage in those local efforts and support those local efforts? So there are efforts that are already going on. How can we support them? In communities where there isn't yet a developed ownership of sort of the philosophy of the Drive to 55, how can we engage with communities to help that along?
Mike's been around. Mike, I guess I should speak, etc. A conversation we had at the Tennessee Press Association actually about reactions from people around the counties, etc., about Tennessee Promise. And one of the things that came out during that was we have no hope of achieving this in our county because we're at 11% or 8%, et cetera, and I suggested at that time that the Drive to 55 makes a great slogan, and I understand how you got to do that. That's an average across the state. But it would be helpful if you're going to be talking in, I'll pick one, Hawkins County, where their rate is probably closer to 11% than the average of 32. If you could think about marketing that or discussing it as 23 points. Because if you look at what we have to do, it's 23 points improvement from where every community is today to get to your average, right? So Williamson County, which may be at 40 or 50% currently, I don't know, it may be as equally difficult for a Williamson County to achieve a 23-point improvement on their current benchmark as it is a Hawkins County to get to 33%. You see what I mean? And if you're going to talk at the local level and engage them, we have to give them a goal they can achieve, reasonably so. And I think monitoring that and helping at the county levels where you stand and how you're progressing over time would be helpful. We live in a very competitive state, and competition causes interest. But I think asking for everybody to reach 55 is, first of all, unrealistic and really not what we're talking about anyway. But if you break it down to 23 points improvement, or whatever that number is, I think that has more, it seems fair, and it's also more doable over the in each community. See what I mean?
So incumbent in what you in terms of just beyond just the messaging tweak.
Yes.
I think the empowering communities with the data. So a lot of the work
Right.
that David and his staff doing, ensuring that data is getting in the hands of the right individuals. That makes a lot of sense.
And just commenting on that, if our local leaders have, and we're talking not just about the high schools, but about the adult learners, trying to get to that population, if they have those talking points that with that data or whatever it is specific to that area,
Right.
Does that make sense? I think that's
Localize it.
Right, localize it and give our leaders some talking points that they can, wherever they are, because they're out and about in the communities, they can just use those. I'm not seeing that right now. I'm not seeing that. We know about what's happening in the high school and the Gear Up program, which is a wonderful program, but we trying to reach those adults.
The other comment I might make then is that I saw a yeoman's effort to get the word out to high school students about Tennessee Promise. I mean, it was a tremendous campaign that you all ran to really focus in, et cetera. And I would suggest to you that that was nothing compared to what your effort's going to have to be on the Reconnect campaign. Because you've got a target audience there. You know who they were. You had a network set up within the high schools. You had a way to do that. None of that exists on the adult learner. And so if you think you're going to be able to get the message out, I think you're going to have to look at a substantial marketing budget and think about a marketing campaign in a wholly different way than you tried to execute on the others. Because I think the difference in your ability to reach out and identify these people and get the word to them. I know you're looking at some research about who started and dropped out, but still, even then, this is going to take some marketing thought and a substantial effort.
Besides reaching out to employers and career centers, along that line of thinking, are there other groups that we really should engage with at the local level? I mean, we have some good relationships with some chambers, not a large number of chambers, but some chambers, for example, community organizations. If there's anything that comes to mind for you that really we should sort of work on a little more, we would like to know that.
Groups that get on the front of the newspaper. Bodies, chamber of course. But their monthly public meeting, it seems to always be covered.
I've got statistics on our own company, and the age group that you're looking at, the 25 to 45-year-old population, is an extraordinarily difficult population to reach with traditional marketing messages. Okay, it just is. And I would highly recommend that you sit down with a strategic marketing group who can speak about some of those issues. They are so diverse in the media they choose, and there are multiple channels and et cetera. There's not a mass medium approach that you will use to try to address those kinds of people, unless it's Jon Stewart's show. So.
Well, and I will note, and I think it's important to note that the governor's office has engaged with the marketing company and is actively progressing in their work around this. But I think it's helpful for us that as it intersects with the commission's work and the programmatic work that we're doing, that we ensure that we're tapping into those things and aligning those messages. So one of the other things that we talked about, and I think what you've heard us talk about, is a little bit about the work that we're doing. And I think the language that we like to use in our office is empowering institutions, empowering LEAs, empowering communities around this goal. So this builds on the previous question of localizing the Drive 55. But if we expand it out to school districts and to higher ed institutions, what are the ways that we and the Commission in our work around the populations that we talked about this morning, how can we better empower, better partner with those entities to really accomplish the work at hand? In either population. Mm-hmm. Good example of how we've done this in the past, I think, is Jessica's work around the PLA task force. I mean, the work that's being done in terms of better serve a types of activity. I think it is part of what the mission of THEC are pieces of.
Let me ask you a question about that. Are there lessons from the adult work or the CACG Gear Up work that are lessons for us as we think through the answer to your question? I mean, strategies that you know have a good probability of success?
I can speak to Gear Up and to what we're doing with LSS. I think one of the tenets of Gear Up was that we partner with community-based organizations. Every Gear Up grantee has a steering committee made up of community partners, and part of what we do with those entities is make sure that they have the data in front of them to evaluate where they are in their community and where it is that they want to go. With LSS, very similarly, I think what Memphis is doing around localizing the Drive 55 to articulate a community-wide goal around college attainment, they know and are developing the knowledge of knowing what they need to do in order to do their part around the Drive 55. They're operationalizing then their community around that. What can we do, I guess, the question is, to start replicating such great activity across the state? How can we be a catalyst for that type of work? And it might be something, too, that we think on. It's something we discuss in a future time. But that's the direction where I see us headed.
Mm-hmm. And from the work that we've done with institutions specifically, I mean, to be frank, since 2010 and the Complete College Tennessee Act, I think the institutions have suffered a bit of initiative fatigue. So how is it that we can, how is it that we can support institutions to continue the good work and to enhance that good work without putting additional burdens on them? So it's a balancing act, I think, as well. So we would like to provide support in that way. So we're of course always open to suggestions.
Thanks
very much. The next item on the agenda is item 2B, the LEAP program update, and we'll call on Mr. Kurt Johnston for that item.
Good afternoon. My name is Kurt Johnston, and I am the Director of Education and Workforce Alignment at THEC. I began my job about 3 weeks ago, so I'm very excited to speak to you this afternoon. My responsibilities in this role have placed me as the Director of Labor Education Alignment Grant Program, or LEAP for short. LEAP is a program that's originated from the notion that state policymakers and administrators should be placing workforce demands at the center of state policy, really the driving force behind it. LEAP plays into this movement by serving as a special spoke in the wheel of the Drive to 55. You notice there were 5 tenets that were posted earlier. We heard about how the Drive to 55 is focused on getting students ready for college level work, getting students enrolled, getting students out on time, getting students back to campus if they've left early. And LEAP serves as another piece of that puzzle by ensuring that the students that are enrolled in Tennessee higher education are participating in a system that's going to arm them with the hard and soft skills that are needed in today's workforce. LEAP is ultimately a product of the state government being nimble in its attempt to provide resources for localized groups to take control of their own destinies and make a real dramatic change in the economic status of their community. This process has required that a series of specific government agencies, as well as a slew of local stakeholders, be in a conversation with each other in a way that they never have before. When I think about these groups that have participated in this conversation, I like to think of them as existing under two umbrellas. The first is an internal alignment of government agencies under the governor's workforce subcabinet. This group includes voices from a variety of government agencies, including THEC, the Board of Regents, Department of Labor, Department of Education, the Education and Community Development, as well as the Department of Human Services. Having these groups in a room at the same time in a conversation is a pretty powerful tool. The data that's available, the voices that come into play are all playing a crucial role in shaping the direction of what's happening with this program and this grant. However, the real power, in my opinion, comes from the regional collaboratives that have sprung up as a result of this grant. Community colleges and TCATS administrators, K-12, career and technical education groups, localized workforce boards, local economic development entities, and employers have all been a part of a conversation that have identified where gaps are in the workforce and immediately pointed to where they can be fixed. It's part of this alignment of this internal and external group that LEAP's been able to gain solid direction. During these conversations, it became very clear that Tennessee's colleges of applied technology and the community colleges were really primed to make the most profound impact in a variety of fields that were identified as having gaps, particularly in sectors related to advanced manufacturing, industrial maintenance, mechatronics, information technology, and professional development for soft skills. And we've heard all of this being mentioned in different pieces throughout today. So LEAP is directly echoing that. We've moved very quickly in this process. As you can see from our timeline here, the request for proposals to send out for this grant went out in the fall of 2014. 29 grant applicants submitted in November. 12 projects were selected by that workforce subcabinet committee in December of 2014. I came on January 6th, and project start dates were last week, a week ago today. I'd like to give a special thank you to Scott Sloan and the rest of the legal team here at THEC. We moved very quickly with their help, and were able to get this off the ground in a timely manner. The proposals themselves were graded on a variety of criteria. The whole grant was for $10 million. Each grant could only receive a maximum of $1 million. A local match was required of 10% of the grant up to $50,000. Each grant needed to be at least a 2-year grant, but needed to have a plan for sustainability down the road. They needed to display a strong data-driven alignment with those regional collaboratives I mentioned before, and they also needed to have buy-in from at least 3 counties. And this usually came in the form of usually K-12 administrators, high schools that have bought into what's going on in the community colleges and reacted to that to help build a workforce pipeline. These are all 12 projects on the left column, as well as the higher education partner and counties that are aligned with them. The board, you may notice that they are in your printouts. So I apologize for the small print. These are all the counties that are served currently by the 12 programs. You'll notice that these are color-coded between advanced manufacturing and mechatronics, information technology, and improved employment pathways. To clarify, however, these groups, just because a county is color-coded one color does not mean it's not touching any of these other groups that are happening. In fact, for improved employment pathways, you can really make every county gray. Those are dedicated towards building internships with employers that have bought into the process and been part of the conversation. Information technology has built quite a corridor down the middle. You'll be seeing programs that are going to be focused on everything from mobile application development to your essential programming coding that you normally see in what's happening in our community colleges already. Advanced manufacturing and mechatronics, it's certainly an exciting thing. You know, Dr. DiPietro mentioned before about some of the amazing things that are happening with development across the state in manufacturing. This is just one piece of it to try to get our students as excited and engaged in this process as we are in this room. I do want to mention two of the projects that we're working on so far, or that are part of this group. One is called the Manufacturing Mechatronics for Soldiers and Students, or M2S2. I'm guessing that the Veteran Connection really likes to have the code name. Provided the purpose of this program is really in two prongs. It provides accelerating mechatronics training and career pathway options for transitioning soldiers as they're making their way back into civilian life. These programs are accelerated and they are hosted on campus, on the Fort Campbell base. There are also opportunities for advanced manufacturing CTE coursework to be made available to high school juniors, as well as incumbent workers through TCAT Dixon, as well as any of the high schools that are offering dual enrollment. The students that participate in this are going to be eligible to sit for the Siemens Level 1 certification. In these three counties, there are several manufacturing groups that are working specifically with Siemens work, so this is going to lead directly into amazing opportunities for them professionally right out of their high school experience if they complete the program quickly enough, and into the TCAT opportunities as well. I do want to point out that M2S2 also has made the effort to align themselves with a four-year degree. Austin P has jumped in as part of the partnership here, and all the coursework in these programs are going to be eligible for that four-year program. Everything is going to be building up in a very neat package for those students should they choose to pursue that degree. Another opportunity, closing gaps through partnerships. This is run out of TCAT Pulaski as well as a partnership with Martin Methodist College. The program serves to work with both students and incumbent workers in 7 counties. It's one of our largest programs, seeking to reach about 4,000 students over the course of the next 2 years to offer credits towards a certified production technician. Again, one of the major reasons that this is such an exciting program is because of the number of openings that are already available for students. The moment they receive their certification, they'll be able to jump into a very exciting career in manufacturing in these plants that are working with robotics, are building amazing things, and reshoring a lot of the American industry back here in Tennessee. So that is a brief presentation on what LEAP is. Does anybody have any questions? Yes.
What about the counties that there was no shading for those counties? Will there be future opportunities?
Absolutely. The reason that there's no shading for those counties is because at the time of the proposal, there wasn't a K-12 alignment at that point. But as you can tell, rising tide raises all ships. I have a strong feeling that as we move forward, there will be opportunities for other students to participate in that from those counties as well.
Kurt, in the last slide, you said you're looking for 4,000.
Those are students, so it's not. We're not going to be creating 4,000 certificates in 2 years. That would be amazing, but we're really trying to impact 4,000 students in high school, earning credits towards that CPT program. Any other questions? Wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you, Kurt.
Let me make a couple of comments about that. And echoing part of what Kurt said, it is a heavy lift to, within his first 2 weeks, with the help of Scott Sloan and the legal staff, to get all 12 of these projects, the contracts, up and running and executed. And these are not 12 boilerplate contracts and projects. They're unique. They have different scopes. And Kurt and Scott and Philip Kramer and Marcy Mills really did a great work getting them ready to go. Project director meeting, you said, is next Friday, I think. Or you didn't even say that part, did you?
I didn't say that part.
Yeah. I thought I heard you did, but well, let's just assume you did. Project director meeting hosted by Kurt this coming Friday, where they'll meet in here, I suppose, to really talk about getting these projects up and running. That's a remarkable pace, and I commend him for that. The program itself is sort of remarkable. I mean, you think about the obviousness of K-12, higher ed, workforce, local government coming together to solve a very specific workforce problem. That sounds rather obvious, but that's tough to cut through all those silos to do that program. And so it took a lot of foresight by the state, and it's off to a very great start. And so, Kurt, we're glad you're shepherding that along the way. So.
All right, thanks, Dr. Deaton. Next item on the agenda is 2C. It's the academic program review. And I will call upon Ms. Dandridge Johnson once again.
It's item 2C in your notebook, and it's the Academic Program Review. And this process provides a holistic view of the degree programs offerings throughout the state, and it includes reports on program activity as well as the monitoring of new academic programs. The second part is that the process also involves a review of all mature programs based on nationally recognized standards, and this review of mature programs is conducted on a 3-year evaluation cycle. The Commission has the statutory responsibility to review and approve new programs, while the responsibility for program termination lies with TBR and UT. In 2014, 34 new programs were added to the state's inventory. In 2011, THEC delegated approval authority for associate and certificate degree programs to TBR, and they approved 27 new programs. Overall, new program approvals remain stable in comparison to 2013, with 37 new programs approved. A total of 15 programs were terminated by the governing boards, and this is in comparison to 5 programs that were terminated in 2013. Per the policy, THEC is required to annually report on the progress of new programs, and I appreciate Herbert Brown's role in the monitoring of these programs. Programs are monitored based on a comparison of their projected benchmarks from the approved proposal with actual figures. In 2014, close to 60 new programs were monitored. Programs at the baccalaureate level and beyond are monitored for 5 years, while the community college programs are monitored for 3 years. Per the policy that was just approved by you all, the new doctoral programs will now be monitored for 7 years. Over 70% of new programs are meeting at least one of their benchmarks in either enrollment or graduation. 4 programs were delayed for implementation, but they are now on track for starting this year. And it's interesting, all 3 of the 4 programs were in the areas of occupational therapy. The monitoring process allows for an ongoing dialogue regarding program quality and improvement, especially when a program has completed its official monitoring cycle but has failed to achieve the benchmarks as set out in their program proposal. Last year, we reported that the 5 programs on the screen would have their monitoring cycle extended. Additionally, faculty and administrators had to submit program productivity plans to correct deficiencies. And for example, the Early Childhood Education PhD program plan that ETSU submitted addressed issues associated with faculty recruitment along with student recruitment. And the program is now, there are 23 students enrolled, and they will be awarding their first 4 doctoral degrees later this year. Program Productivity Review is the THEC's comprehensive review of all mature programs based on nationally identified production benchmarks. And these benchmarks are, we expect on average 10 graduates for baccalaureate as well as associate degree programs. We expect at least at a minimum 5 graduates for master's programs, and then we anticipate 3 graduates for doctoral programs. Please note that this is only one indicator of program quality, and there are other measures such as our number of majors, accreditation and program reviews, our faculty research, and our economic development impact that also demonstrates program quality. And our own performance funding quality assurance program addresses those other program quality indicators. The review was based on graduation data from 2008 through 2013, and these reports were disseminated to the governing boards for review and recommendations for program action for all programs that were not meeting the benchmarks. And due to the leadership of the governing boards, the campuses really took the process very serious. I was very, very impressed with the leadership provided by Dr. Denley. He involved the campuses in dialogue not only on those underperforming programs, but their whole academic program inventory. And also Warren Nichols and Katie Hyde were very involved with their respective campuses as well. Now, what did we find out? Currently we have 1,600 academic programs, and this is just focusing in on the community colleges and universities. And how do I get back? You see from the chart, there are currently 1,600 program offerings that are offered by our universities as well as our community colleges. 1,400 or 88% are achieving those national benchmarks. At the universities, 100 programs were not meeting benchmarks, and the majority of them were master's degree programs, and they were either in the fields of biological science or health fields. At the community colleges, there were 90 programs that were identified as underperforming, and 16 of those were recommended for program termination. And the campuses were requested in conjunction with the governing boards to look at all of the underperforming programs and then recommend appropriate program action. And that could fall into one of three categories, whether they recommend to retain the program, it could be consolidated or terminated. Those underperforming programs that were retained or consolidated, campuses were required to submit action plans to increase productivity. And for example, the Associate of Science teaching program that is offered at Ford, the community college, they submitted a common action plan that will focus on ways to prepare students to pass the Praxis 1 exam. There were also some common themes that arose in relation to ways to increase overall program productivity, such as academic advisement and exploring cooperative education opportunities. The state's academic program inventory is an ever-evolving process and requires monitoring of both new and mature programs. And I believe that the state should feel very confident in the quality of its program offerings in addressing the state force workforce needs. And one of the statements in terms of reading this comprehensive reports from all of the campuses and saw this quote from Dr. Denise King, I think really is reflective of this process. And she wrote, over the course of the year, you may expect to see our academic inventory change as we weed our less productive programs and those that may not be meaningful for our communities, and proposals for new programs that more directly meet the identified needs in our service areas. And the full report will be available on the THEC website early next month. Are there questions?
Any questions?
But I have a question. I suppose I should know the answer to this. When programs are not meeting benchmarks, being unproductive, is that usually a function of just overestimating the student demand, or are there financial things going on? What's typically at play?
There are really a lot of issues at play. One is sometimes the estimates are conservative, and that the campuses know what those national benchmarks are. And so therefore they're trying to make sure that they meet those minimum standards. Others in terms of that they may overproject in terms of looking at what the national or even the regional demand is. And so as a result, then they're not meeting those benchmarks. But one of the things that I've also found in terms of when Herbert and I are reviewing this data is that oftentimes is that institutions have a slow start. And so they really need a very comprehensive recruitment plan to really make sure that they're getting off to a good start. And so that was one of the reasons why, in reviewing the academic policies, that we recommended to include requiring institutions to include that recruitment plan.
Does THEC recommend termination? I'm kind of curious that approve these programs, but it's left to the boards, individual boards, to terminate. We're part of the review process, and do we make recommendations to the boards as to whether we think this should terminate or not? Do we?
Yes, we can make those recommendations, and we have done so.
Thank you, Mr. John. Next order of business is item 2D, the spring quarterly meeting. Dr. Deaton?
Mr. Chairman, that's April 23rd, which I hope and pray is a Thursday, as they typically are, be in this room. So yeah, that's when we will gather again.
Great. All right, ladies and gentlemen, do we have any announcements or other comments? This is sort of the open item on the agenda. Anyone have a comment or a thought they'd like to share with the commission?
I have a few just quick things. After this 3:30 joint meeting with the state board here in this room, so we look forward to that. I want to thank again Dennis Jones for being here and bringing his presence and wisdom to our conversation. We will be relying on your sagacity quite a bit these next few months, particularly as we engage in master planning and other items, so look forward to that. Also, a few weeks ahead, the governor's budget will hopefully be presented once the special session is behind us, and we will, with great interest, examine what's in there for us and how that impacts higher ed. So.
Very good. Dr. Deaton, thank you very much. Being no further business before the commission, the meeting is adjourned. Well, thank you. Attention, please. Let me introduce myself. My name is Evan Cope, and I'm from Murfreesboro. I am the newly elected chairman of the Tennessee Higher Education Commission, and I want to take this opportunity to welcome everyone here today, especially from the State Board of Education, and tell you we're really glad to have you here. There are a few people, first of all, that I'd like to recognize. First of all, is Dr. Candace McQueen, Commissioner McQueen. Welcome to THEC, and we really appreciate you being here for this meeting. Also would like to congratulate and welcome Dr. Sarah Hayburn. Where's Sarah? I just met her.
Ended over
Here she
here.
is.
Yeah,
Okay,
thanks,
great.
Evan.
Great. Well, congratulations on your appointment and welcome to THEC also. And we have I guess, an alumnus of THEC who is now on the State Board of Education and a wise mind and somebody I look up to and admire very much. His name is Cato Johnson. And we want to take this opportunity, Cato, to welcome you back to THEC, and we're thankful to have the benefit of your wisdom here today.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
Is my picture still up? That's what I need to really know.
We've gone up south on our walk.
Picture's down, okay, good. Picture's still up, good. Okay.
Well, as I'm sure everyone can appreciate, we've had meetings all day long since about 10 o'clock this morning, and so everyone is just about met out, as I'm sure y'all are too. So we'll sort of move right into the agenda, and at this time it looks like I'm to recognize the chairman of the State Board of Education, Fielding Ralston. And any comments you'd like to share or have?
You know, the thing we might do is just go around and get everybody to introduce themselves, Ed. And I'm Fielding Ralston. I'm chair of the State Board. I'm from Kingsport.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Right. Mike is on. I'm Sarah Hayburn. I'm the newly appointed Executive Director at the State Board of Education. Happy to be here.
I'm Alex Martin, and I'm the student representative from the TBR system.
Allison Chancey, District 3.
Carolyn Perry, District 5 here in Nashville on the State Board of Education.
I'm Mike Edwards, State Board from Knoxville.
Candace McQueen, Commissioner, Department of Education.
Bonnie Roberts, State Board, District 4.
Wendy Tucker, State Board from Williamson County.
Ado Johnson, State Board, District 8.
Lillian Hartgrove, District 6 on the State Board.
Sharon Hayes, THEC Board Member from Brownsville, Tennessee.
Thank you very much. Anybody? Well, Russ.
At the table, Russ Deaton, and I'm Executive Director for the Higher Education Commission.
I'm Keith Wilson, and I'm from Fielding's hometown.
That's claim to fame. I'm Pam Coben. I'm with THEC, and I'm from District 5 here in Nashville.
Have I missed anybody? Anybody else? Rusty thing? Okay. Well, at this point, unless anyone has any comments, we'll move right into our agenda this afternoon and start with Pathways to Prosperity. I will call on Danielle Mazzara. I hope I pronounced your name correctly. Mazzara. Right, thank you.
Thank you so much. As shared, I am Danielle Mazur. I serve as the Assistant Commissioner for CTE, and it truly is an honor to be before both of the governing bodies this afternoon. Pathways Tennessee is a statewide initiative, and before I start, each of you has a copy of the deck that I will go through this afternoon. But Pathways Tennessee is a statewide initiative which has really been a growing part of our state fabric since 2011. Both the State Board of Education and the Tennessee Higher Education Commission are members of the Pathways Tennessee statewide planning team, which helps set focus and expansion opportunities across the state on behalf of Pathways. Today, my objective is to provide you with not only an overview of Pathways and how it functions within the greater landscape of our state efforts, but also to draw your attention to its essential components, one of which directly addresses our statewide focus to drive more purposefully the interlinking of education and industry in order to drive economic growth and prosperity. And so while you have a copy of this presentation, I will spend the majority of my time diving into certain slides that I believe will really kind of capture the most important elements of Pathways. So though I won't spend too much time on this slide, I do want to call particular attention to the very simple fact that our employer and employment landscape has shifted quite a bit nationally and within Tennessee. This is a well-known fact to each and every one of you who are in this room, given the work that each of you do, but it's also the essential motivation of Pathways Tennessee. In a 2013 report from the Economic Analysis and Research Network, it noted that states can build a strong foundation for economic success and shared prosperity by investing in education, and that providing expanded access to high-quality education will not only expand economic opportunity for residents, but also will likely do more to strengthen the overall state economy than anything else a state government can do. Under the leadership of Governor Haslam, various initiatives have been launched to achieve just that. Essential to these initiatives is Pathways Tennessee, which serves as a leading vehicle to drive this change, as the overall goal for Pathways states to provide Tennessee students in grades 7th through 16th access to rigorous academic career pathways, which are interlinked with local, regional, and state economic and labor data market needs and trends, in order to develop and promote a workforce that is educated and skilled in those chosen fields. The Pathways model is one that we have espoused within the Department of Education as a leading approach in how we define the development and promotion of seamless student pathways between secondary going into post-secondary. And is also the same approach that our Pathways regions also must espouse. But for long-term success, the development of aligned academic career pathways for students, as acknowledged also by Governor Haslam, must become more of the norm rather than the exception in our conversations and in our policies. The Pathways model also exhibits itself through the shared strategic goals and priorities of member state agencies, and where it matters most, at the regional and local levels through vested stakeholders. These key stakeholders at the state level include the following. In terms of economic development groups, at the state level, Tennessee Department of Economic Community Development. Industry partners, Tennessee Business Roundtable. K-12 school systems, again at the state level, the Department of Education and SCORE. State and local government, the Governor's Office. Post-secondary partners, both systems, as well as TECUA and the Tennessee Higher Education Commission. And lastly, workforce investment boards at the state level, Department of Labor and Workforce Development. What distinguishes Pathways can be found really in two of its main drivers. First, as mentioned, its drive to discover and exploit already existing shared stakeholder goals and priorities, essentially focusing on the DNA of a member agency or entity rather than trying to develop a one-off initiative, which usually never fully glues as itself to that function of that agency. If you fold yourself within the elements of an agency, then you have the ability to have a long-term buy-in and success within that agency or entity. And second, as its focus on ensuring that the true decision-making around education and industry is occurring at the regional and local levels, rather than being driven down from the state level using a cookie-cutter approach. So what does this look like from a structure? As shared just on that last slide, the statewide planning team and statewide planning and implementation team, which is made up of state level, senior level members through the state level agencies. The big piece that I really want to draw your attention to is the regional leadership it is that regional leadership that makes Pathways Tennessee successful. And that involves first the identification of regional intermediary that drives the decision making at that regional and local level. So again, not having a cookie cutter approach, not driving down from the state, but rather driving up from the local and regional levels. What are the key priorities that are found within that region, within that local level in terms of economic development, educational opportunities, and let that community drive the decision making and drive the alignment that is so critically important in terms of that buy-in. So in that term, they will develop also leadership teams, work teams, and again, where they need to, they're the ones that identify the needs within the region and in the local communities. So if one were to kind of look at the Tennessee model, there are a couple of things that I really want to call out. Again, it's the vehicle to drive state focuses. It promotes alignment of state and regional policies. And two, it looks at existing agency funding opportunities to leverage collaborative engagement. It is not the tail that wags the dog. It is simply there to help assist and support the things that regional partners wish to do. So we really look at mobilizing that skin in the game, that buy-in that is so essential to that long-term commitment at that local and regional level. Too often we have things that provide dollar amounts, and once that sunsets, the interest in the activity also wanes. What we focus on through the Pathways model is that, again, it is the buy-in at the regional and local levels that drives the decision-making, that drives the reinvestment from different stakeholders, that really causes that alignment and that leverage to take place. So within the Pathways Tennessee regions, the Pathways statewide planning team uses the economic community development's 9 regions. They're base camp regions. The reason being is that these regions actually were developed based off of feeder patterns. So where cross-county feeder patterns might exist, somebody might live in one county, they work in another county, all of that is interconnected. And so we work off of the regions that were identified through ECD. Presently, we have 4 regions online and 2 more planned for rollout this year. As shared, the success of Pathways is found at the regional and local levels. At these levels, it is the heavy lifting of the regional intermediary that drives the regional focused pathways. The regional intermediaries who are on board and online now you can find to the right in the upper Cumberland region, it's the Highlands of Tennessee. The southeast region, the Tennessee Association of Manufacturers. Southwest is the Southwest Tennessee Development District. The Northwest is the WIOA 12, or Workforce Investment Board for Region 12. And as you will notice, there's also not a cookie-cutter approach to who should serve in that intermediary role. However, the similarity does rest in the ways in which all regions work together in terms of identifying their focuses. There is a method, a protocol that regions follow, that the intermediaries follow in order to drive decision-making and in order to identify what the key priorities and opportunities are within that region. And to the left, you see what those, essentially those action steps are that are assigned to an intermediary, again, who drives the decision-making. So as shared earlier, the Pathways model focuses on the establishment of a seamless secondary to post-secondary to career pathway for all students. And I underline the word all. Too often in the past, we have had these students over here and those students over here. And you recall the economic labor data, that is no more, and it should never be anything that we want to promote going forward. All students should be well-heeled in the ways in which they perform academically, as well as in their technical and soft skills. And so this framework gets to really the heart of how this works. And so if you were to start with the middle school, work into the high school, and then move into your post-secondary, if it works right, and if we do our job right, this is a seamless pathway for that student to where he or she will graduate, whether they leave immediately into employment following high school and come back into post-secondary or leave post-secondary to find a career, all of which should be lined well with what the sustainable opportunities are within that region, and in this case also across the state, what we promote. So I want to, though, focus on some of the key elements that must be present and play part of it. So the first one is ensuring that active industry involvement in student learning starts at the very early grades. Second is that you have strong integration of student supports, interventions, and counseling, what I would call kind of that wraparound service. Thirdly, we need to make sure that our students are banking post-secondary credits and or industry certifications while in high school. The more the tools are that that student has within his or her tool belt, the more likely they're going to be successful at that next stage in his or her career. Fourth, a seamless transition to secondary and post-secondary. And what I mean by that is that as a secondary system, we must work hard to make sure that we're well aligned in terms of the programs, the courses that we are offering, and what at the secondary level is being offered as well. If there's a disconnect, it's important and incumbent upon both systems to work hard to make sure that we close that gap and that disconnect so, again, it is a seamless transition for that student from secondary to post-secondary. Fifth, we need to have multiple student entry and exit points for grades 13 through 16. And again, what that really refers to is this issue of alignment, is that if I decide I graduate from high school, I decide to go to a TCAT, and I complete and receive a credential, say in a health science or health occupation. I work for a year or two. I decide or realize I need to continue my education in order to either move up or receive an increase in my salary. Then I should seamlessly be able to move into either a community college program or possibly a bachelor's program at one of our system schools. That's what I would talk about an entry and exit point, is that our flow should be such that an individual can come in or out without loss of credit, without loss of time in achieving what he or she would like to do in his or her life. And then lastly, again, the most important thing is if we're on the right pathway, all of those pathways should lead to a qualified job within workforce opportunities where we have high needs, high pay, or high skills that are necessary to drive the agenda for this state. So if you were to kind of look at it then from a specific field, and what I've provided for you here is a look at a pathway focus in advanced manufacturing, which is prevalent in several of our pathways regions. And so you can start to see where the payoff starts to happen. So if the student begins in his middle or her middle school years, they should first do a career exploration course. They should be looking at what it is that he or she might want to do as they get older. Where are their interests? They decide as they move into high school that mechatronics is where they want to be. Mechatronics falls within advanced manufacturing. Part of that progressive work around that program of study is a capstone practicum that student would take in his or her junior or senior year. So they're capping on the progressive learning and skill sets that they're receiving through that program of study of mechatronics. They then move into post-secondary, determining where and when they wish to get off. But what you can see, and this is where the payoff of this model should play out, is that if it is seamless and it is aligned, then the student moves through these 3 tiers of post-secondary into a qualified occupation that pays a strong wage no matter when he or she wishes to finish their education or to get back on and complete additional education. So, though I provided a very quick overview of Pathways Tennessee, it's my hope that you have gained a better feel for these central components of Pathways within the larger landscape of our governor's and state's commitment to more learned and skilled citizenry. So thank you very, very much for your time this afternoon, and I'm very happy to answer any questions if time permits.
Questions? Yes, ma'am.
Maybe give us some examples. Course.
Yeah. So the question was is how does industry participate in maybe the middle school time period? And this is where, for the state board, this is where that work-based learning continuum comes into play. They received a presentation on work-based learning earlier today. And that's exactly where that piece of component comes in, is that how this works is that when there is a course that the student could take if a district signs up for it as early as 8th grade. But part of that really is taking it back even further is a progressive exposure for students around various industry opportunities. And that can be as simple as having a member of an industry come and speak to a classroom in elementary school or in middle school to make them more aware of what their company does. Another piece is maybe go and have a field trip then that goes to the site of that company, and the company hosts those students within that classroom. It can also be job shadowing as the student gets older. So it's intended within the work-based learning piece of it to be a progressive exposure and experience within the area of interest that he or she might have. And our hope is that those industry partners who come on literally almost grow with that cohort of students themselves. They get more comfortable with the students who they are seeing on a regular basis. And when they get to that age, that junior and senior year where they might be eligible to do an internship or apprenticeship, the likelihood of that company saying, you know what, I will take that student to do the internship is very, very high because that rapport has been built, that trust has been built, and then each party knows what they're walking into. So that middle school years is much more about just exposure and getting them comfortable with what might be out there for them.
Point number 3, I kind of get the university or college BA, that speaks, you have a program that's, let's say, dual enrollment program that functions in that. Have you started developing, or do you have developed sort of programs specific to Pathway 1 and Pathway 2, the community college and the tech college? Do you have those programs sort of thought through how those might work?
In terms of where the student would go?
How in high school one might bank tech college credit or community college credit?
Yep. That is typically made available through dual credit courses and dual enrollment courses. So a dual credit course, we have a couple of different options. One, which typically is the case, is you have local articulation between a school district and a nearby institution. What we also have in play and that we continue to grow on is actually a statewide dual credit course program where the student could take a course, whether it's TCAT related or community college related, that student passes that course, passes the challenge exam for that course, banks those credit hours, and those credit hours actually would transfer with that student when he or she goes to a TCAT or a community college. So the banking of credits are actually available at all 3 levels of post-secondary. So it's not just simply a 4-year institution. And it gets to the heart of Governor Haslam's Tennessee Promise as well in terms of helping to get students more acclimated, more successful with those first 2 years of post-secondary. Great question. Thank you.
Part of this developing a critical mass of students who would both get a high school diploma and simultaneously have banked enough credits to get a post-secondary credential, or is that just going to be for the few and far between? Or
obviously that refers to. So the question is would a student be able to bank enough to where essentially maybe he or she might walk away with a certification or credential at a TCAT or a AS or AA by the time they graduate from high school, and that's not really necessarily the intention. I mean, you've got your middle colleges, and those are the ones that really truly drive. Now, all that being said, if you have a student who's well motivated and is able to take courses outside of the requirements for high school graduation and bank even more within the variety of different offerings that are available, whether it's the grant, the HOPE grant that's available for dual enrollment courses or on their own, dime, that is completely available to them. One thing that I will mention is that, particularly to get to that point, we are doing pilots with some of our TCATs where the student chooses a program of study that we've already predetermined, and that student actually takes all of the courses within that program of study through the TCAT. So all of those courses are actually bankable post-secondary credit hours, which would position that student very, very well to finish just whatever remaining credits he or she has to do. So we're piloting those. Those will be for select areas where it makes the most sense that we can move students very quickly through, and it fits well within the schedule of that school system.
other questions?
We were told no.
Well, in that case,
we were not supposed to tell anybody.
Well, in that case, well, thank you for your presentation.
We ignore him.
We will move on to agenda item number 3, which is Tennessee Ready, and we would call upon Emily Freitag.
Good afternoon. Formerly Emily Barton, I am now Emily Freitag, and I am the Assistant Commissioner for Curriculum and Instruction.
Hi, my name is Nakia Towns, and I am the Assistant Commissioner for Data and Research. I joined the department in January, so this is my first time appearing before this body. I was most recently at Knox County Schools as Chief Accountability Officer.
And together we co-manage the assessment program for the Tennessee Department of Education. We are here today to share some topics with you about the new assessments for math and English language arts, Tennessee Ready, and also some information about the new social studies assessments that will begin next year. You have a book that we have shared with districts in information meetings across the state, and we'll refer to it throughout.
So first, let's review where we are as of this year. This picture gives you a view of the Tennessee Comprehensive Assessment Program, otherwise known as TCAP. And so in grades 3 through 11, we have achievement, EOC, and writing assessments, and then all our alternative assessments for students with disabilities and for English language learners. So in breaking that down a little bit more, right now we are organized around the grade level. So typically, people refer to grades 3 through 8 as TCAP, which is somewhat of a misnomer because TCAP is the overarching program, and the achievement tests are the actual grade through 3 through 8. And then when the subjects covered in that area are reading, math, and science. This year, we're doing a social studies field test, and we will introduce a new social studies assessment next year aligned with our new standards. In grades high school, 9 through 11, the end of course assessments are what we have in the different subjects that are shown here. So we're also doing the U.S. history field test. And right now we do the writing assessment separately. This year we're doing all grades, doing the writing assessment. And historically that had only been in grades 5, 8, and 11. But this year for the first time we're doing all grades. And then of course the alternate assessments. So moving into 2015-16, we'll be introducing the new 10 Ready assessment, which Emily and I are very excited about and working hard on. And then you will see that the achievement and EOC assessments remain in the science and social studies content area. And then we'll have our new alternate assessments with the THEC replacing the portfolio. So one of the major changes when you think about the introduction of 10 Ready is that we'll be organizing ourselves around the content strand. So we have the math content strand for 10 Ready, which is going to include grades 3 through 8. In high school, we'll have 2 different pathways for math. Algebra 1, geometry, which will be a new assessment, or Algebra 2 and Algebra 2, which is the traditional pathway that we have had historically. And then we'll be introducing the new integrated math pathway, which is math 1, 2, or 3. So students in high school, district, and schools will make a choice as to which of those 2 students will be using.
And one note on integrated mathematics, for those who might have been reading the newspaper recently, the state board approved integrated mathematics courses last year. They are the same content, Algebra 1, Geometry, Algebra 2, but taught in a integrated manner, which is quite typical in other countries and many other states. Districts will have the choice about whether they choose the traditional pathway or the integrated pathway. They are equally rigorous and the same standards.
And so in looking at the second content area for 10 Ready, English language arts. And so one of the big changes here is that we are going to incorporate writing in the 10 Ready assessment. So writing will not stand alone. For 10 Ready in the ELA strand, writing will be incorporated. We'll have grades 3 through 8 and English 1, 2, and 3 as we have today. And so on the achievement and EOC side, we'll continue with science, grades 3 through 8, biology and chemistry. And then next year, the new social studies assessment, including grades 3 through 8 and U.S. history will be introduced. So what we believe about the new 10 Ready, what our focus is going to be and how we're going to move students in Tennessee forward, is that we believe that this assessment program, it will be adaptable to the standards. We recognize that we are in a standards review process. 10 Ready is going to give us the flexibility to align our assessment with the new standards, whatever those may be at the end of that process. Of course, educators are going to be involved all along the way. So this is going to be for Tennessee educators, and Tennessee educators will be at every step providing their input. So this will be specific to our state. We continue to raise our expectations and introduce critical thinking. You'll see that with the reliance on evidence in terms of integrating that at all levels, thinking about students still being able to demonstrate math fluency without a calculator, so that rigor will still be there. And then we're going to ask that students, even in math, show part of their work. So it's not about getting the right answer. It's about how we arrived at that answer, and there'll be the opportunity for students to get partial credit. And then we will certainly have opportunities for parents to be able to see what this new assessment looks like and provide tools and resources for parents to really have an understanding of what the expectations for students will be going forward.
So a few highlights in your book. If you all would turn to page 5. This is behind the 10 Ready tab. The Tennessee Ready assessment was selected through a rigorous process that involved both members of higher education and K-12 education. The process for the procurement is outlined in this table. The RFP was released in in July, with responses in September. There were 5 bids. The top 3 technical bids advanced to an interview phase. And at the close of that interview phase, the committee of Tennesseans that selected this assessment selected Measurement Incorporated as the primary vendor with a subcontract with AIR. On the next page, page 7, are the mandatory requirements against which this review was selected. And then on page 11 is the timeline for implementation. The first administration of the Tennessee Ready assessment will be this coming November, so in about 10 months for high schools on block schedule. On page 13, this is probably the meatiest document in this book. It includes an overview of what we know, what we will know, how this is similar to assessments we have conducted in the past, and how this is different. That is both for the overall information, for English language arts specifics, and for mathematics. With 15 minutes for this overview presentation, we don't quite have time to go into the meat of this. This is my favorite part, to discuss exactly what we know about the assessment, but we're happy to take questions. And perhaps the most interesting is, of course, sample items. And beginning on page 17, you can see a glimpse of some of the sample items. These are grade banded, so this doesn't have grade specific information, and these are not shared to give you a full picture of the entire assessment, but instead to give you a sense of the direction. There will be text-based questions. There will be a variety of item types, and writing will be assessed across genres and grade levels. In both mathematics and in English language arts, there are open-ended questions. On page 37, there's additional information about the instructional tools that will also be part of this contract. In addition to the summative assessment, teachers will have access to an online sampler that will include a range of item types at all grade levels. That will be called MICA, and they'll have access to that throughout the year. That will begin this coming May. Then on page 39, we have overview information about accessibility and accommodations. Tennessee Ready is being designed as an accessible test for all students. And there will be the same accessibility features that we see on TCAP, plus additional features that are made possible by the online format, such as zooming and standardized read aloud. So there's information about the accessibility features available to students on that page.
And so on page 41, you can see a little bit about the technology requirements. The 10 Ready will be available as an online assessment. We are in the process of developing what's going to be the policy guideline around that in terms of districts participating in the online assessment platform. And then on the next page,
and I just want to note there will be a paper pencil backup option as well.
Yes. And so on the next page, we talk about the draft testing window. So we shared this, that this is our plan in terms of the assessment window. And the important thing to note is that the part 1 of the 10 Ready ELA is going to correspond around the same timeline that we have for writing. So students are getting ready to do our writing assessment actually starting next week. And so the part 1 of the ELA 10 Ready assessment is planned to be around that same February timeline, with part 2 being the traditional end of year component.
Overall, key information about Tennessee Ready. Rigorous standards demand a rigorous aligned assessment, and we are confident that Tennessee Ready will match the standards with multiple item types. It will be administered in 2 parts, with the first part taking place around when we administer our writing assessment currently in February, and the second part at the end of the year with a block schedule option. Open-ended responses will be scored using trained scorers, and fluency in math will be assessed without the aid of a calculator. Both higher education faculty and K-12 educators will be involved at every step of the process: the selection of the items, the scoring of the items, and the setting of the different performance levels. What is basic? What is advanced? In addition, while we're here, we wanted to share a bit of information about the new social studies assessments. State board members, you'll remember we approved new social studies standards 2 years ago. They are in implementation in classrooms this year. However, we are field testing the test this year without an operational assessment because the magnitude of the change of the standards was so significant that we needed to field test it in a different year than the operational assessment. There's some overview information in the Social Studies tab and some sample items that begin on page 63. This will include both extended response and multiple choice items on the field test. We will have more information about the final operational assessment after the field test, but this will be an equally rigorous assessment, and we expect to see students really stretched in their social studies understanding. We have shared frameworks with teachers. They were out a full year before there will be any operational assessment, as well as rubrics and sample student work. So, key information about social studies: it will be text-based with written essays. It does include a better progression of standards year to year. We had heard that our previous standards were overloaded in certain years and incoherent in terms of the sequence. There is increased emphasis on civics, and that is a fundamental part of the standard and the assessment. And the field test will be conducted online only. Finally, there's training information in the tab behind training. So new standards, new assessments demand important support for teachers and for leaders. And we have planned widespread training opportunities, both for districts. We have already covered all of the information in this packet with districts in December meetings, and we have a follow-up round in March. We also are offering a leadership course, and we have 2,200 principals enrolled in that course voluntarily, who will be getting all of this information. And we will again be conducting summer training this coming summer, and we'll be announcing the final allocations in the coming weeks. So we do expect teachers at every school in every grade band will have access to this information firsthand. In addition, we'll continue to provide sample items and video supports as well. Might have even gone over our 15 minutes, but that is the quickest overview we can offer for 2 very important updates, and we welcome any questions.
Absolutely.
Question, I think.
Hi, on page 45 on the social studies information, it notes that students taking the portfolio won't participate in the field test, and that there'll be a new social studies assessment for those students in 15, 16. Is that going to be NICSIC related, or are you?
It is not. It will be science and social studies will continue to have a new updated portfolio assessment, but it will not be part of NICSIC. NICSIC is just math and ELA.
This test, is it presumed that a student must pass this test to get a high school diploma? Is that where you're headed?
We don't have graduation requirements for passage rates. It is currently in law, it is part of students' grades. And for EOC, that's a variable factor. And there is legislation that has been filed that addresses that particular statute. So this would be a part of grades, but it's not a graduation requirement. However, I will note this morning I had a very productive meeting with Tristan Dinley and Katie High, and in the past, we had been working towards the math and English language arts assessment serving as a measure of college readiness, such that students who get a certain score would be waived from the Compass exams for placement. It's different than admissions, of course. And we are looking to do the same kind of crosswalk to the learning competencies for TBR to ensure that this really is anchored to the expectation. So if a student passes, and at what level is still to be determined, that they would truly be college ready.
Yeah, Emily, thank you for that. I have a couple of questions, and these are both from a professional perspective as well as a personal one, as the father of a second grader who's going to go into this. And first one is, I guess, mechanical. Is there a TCAP or Tennessee Ready test day where you do all this at once? Are they spread out over a couple of 3 weeks? I mean, how is that just logistically happens? First question. And second is, do teachers in later grades have access to how students did on their prior test? And does that then condition anything at all about how they interact with the students in later grades?
So, yeah, I'll take the logistics question. So we are planning, because of the online component and different levels of technology readiness, that we have offered windows. And so districts are going to design their schedules around the windows that we have for the writing assessment. That window is like a 3-week window, and that there are different schools and based on district decisions, LEA decisions, in terms of which students are sitting for the assessment during which part of that window. So we do expect that there will be different schedules within the window that we define, and that's what we published in terms of what those windows are.
And students will continue to learn during that window. I think right now we have some bad habits during testing time of shutting down whole buildings, and there's, it's TCAP time, and that is the focus. And when you have a longer window from the student perspective, it's so important that you're just going to school, right? You're going to school, and maybe Tuesday afternoon you're taking your ELA Part 1, and then the next Thursday morning you're taking ELA Part 2, but between those two times you are still learning and going to school. So that will require support for districts. We have phased this in quite nicely over the past 3 years with the writing assessment growing in grades, and that's been a great training ground for us to support schools and districts in that scheduling.
And then the second part.
Second question. So we are in the phase of determining what those reports will look like, but parents and teachers will have access to more information about how their students performed than they do currently. Right now, you get an overall score, and maybe you get some reporting category information, but we are hopeful and really working to design the assessment so that it provides more granular information so you can know what are the areas that students are doing well in and what are the areas that your children, as a parent and as a teacher, need support. And those will be available to teachers for students from the prior year, so it can inform their decision making as they're setting up for their year.
Questions?
Just one comment here. I think that, it's terribly important that we get the assessments aligned with the standards. We're doing a standards review at the same time we're working on the assessments, and getting those things aligned is one of the most important things we can do.
It is, and I think it is important for us all to just understand a little bit about how tests get developed. It takes us about 18 months from the point that we have standards to have an operational assessment, because we have to develop the items, teachers have to review the items, we have to field test the items, and then develop the new assessment. So I think that's an important thing to remember as we're going through the discussions.
Thank you both.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Okay, item number 4 is the annual joint report. We'll call upon Kimberly Martin to provide that report.
Good afternoon, Joint Commission members. My name is Kim Martin, and I am the Assistant Director of Research at THEC. Each year, the State Board of Education and THEC are required to create a report that highlights the joint work between the two agencies. Specifically, the report includes information in 4 areas. And actually, before I get started, the report should be at your desk for you to take home and read and enjoy. So there are 4 sections in the report. The first section talks about minimizing duplication in elementary, secondary, and post-secondary education. The second section looks at compatibility between high school graduation requirements and college admission requirements. The third section looks at the master plan fulfillment, and this is the extent to which the respective master plans of the board and THEC are being fulfilled. The fourth section looks at state needs in public education. This is the section where we get to discuss all of the really great programs that we're currently conducting that are going to help students meet the needs of students in the state. So while many of the joint programs that are highlighted in this report were initiated as a result of the Complete College Tennessee Act of 2010, in just the past few years, there's been a great deal of change and transition at all levels of public education in Tennessee. For instance, there have been very recent changes in the executive leadership at THEC, the State Board of Education, and the Department of Education. We're now developing programs that respond to Governor Haslam's Drive to 55 initiative. We all know about the Tennessee Promise program. I'm actually excited this evening to be meeting my mentees for the first time, as I'm sure a lot of you have either done or will do very soon. So there is one thing that I would like to focus a little bit of time on, and that's something that's sort of near and dear to my heart. This is something that's a part of the first section of the report, and that is the Measure Tennessee initiative, or the Tennessee Longitudinal Data System. This is a joint project between the Department of Education, the Center for Business and Economic Research at UT Knoxville, the Department of Education, and the Department of Labor and Workforce Development. So basically what we're doing is we're expanding and integrating the P through 20 data systems so that student information can be tracked through all grades and post-secondary education and even into their careers. So basically we're taking all the data from those 3 agencies and combining it so that we can look across at individuals and groups of students across time. Now, say we wanted to ask a question about student retention. This is something that we talk about a lot at THEC. So now what we can do is go back and look at their high school records and a student's elementary school records and sort of see what characteristics or what things influenced their success later on down the road in college. So yesterday, actually, some of my colleagues and I went to the Department of Labor for a training section. I'll probably refer to the Tennessee Longitudinal Data System as TLDS. So we went to a training session at the Department of Labor, and the TLDS staff were there, and they were basically showing us how to get into the new data system. So we now have approved agency staff who can directly access this data. Instead of having to ask the TLDS staff to query or pull the data for us, now we can do it ourselves, which is really great. Another really great thing about TLDS at this point is that they're expanding it to include data from the Department of Children's Services and the Department of Intellectual and Developmental Disabilities. Furthermore, Measure Tennessee, or the TLDS, was the data source for a number of exciting data dashboards that both K through 12 and higher education finalized in the past year. The Tennessee Department of Education's report card, which is available on the website, is one of those data dashboards. This report card includes information on student achievement, graduation rates, and ACT scores. Another example is the EduTrends Tennessee web tool, which was mentioned briefly this morning at the THEC Commission meeting. This web tool gives us some really great specialized information about our progress towards the Drive to 55. For instance, this web tool allows the user to look at student populations in different regions to see how their retention rates or how they're going into college. It also allows us to look at higher ed graduates and how they fit into Tennessee's labor market. The second section of the report is compatibility, and a number of the requirements for compatibility were achieved several years ago when high school graduation requirements and high school course offerings were aligned to meet university admission standards. Now, these requirements are listed in Appendix A and B of the joint report. In the third section, this addresses master plan fulfillment. THEC is in the process of developing a new long-range public agenda that continues the work set forth with the Complete College Tennessee Act and also incorporates our goals of reaching 55% educational attainment by 2025. David Wright actually spoke about this earlier at our commission meeting as well. The final section of the joint report focuses on the extent to which state needs in public education are being met. THEC has worked closely with the Department of Education and the State Board of Education on several programs that will ensure students' academic preparation for post-secondary coursework and provide greater support for monitoring and evaluating student enrollment, retention, and graduation rates. One of those programs is one that I'm sure you've heard a lot about, and that's the Race to the Top program. While a majority of the grant ended in June 2014, THEC was granted a one-year extension to assist teacher training programs by incorporating rigorous K-12 standards into teacher curriculum. Another program is Gear Up, whose goal is to increase the number of minority and low-income students enrolling and succeeding in college. During year 2 of Gear Up Tennessee, the program provided services to over 8,000 students, 1,000 educators, and 19,000 parents and guardians. This is just a small sample of a long list of all the great programs that we're offering, many of which were discussed earlier at our commission meeting. And I invite you to speak to those program directors about these programs if you're interested in them. As you can see, over the last 5 years, Tennessee has achieved a great deal of success at every level. Achievement of our goals will require continued collaboration as we make strides towards increasing economic and educational attainment and the vitality of the state. So if you have any questions, I will do my best to direct them to people who know the answers. So
Well said.
Go ahead.
Questions? Great. Well, thank you very much, Kim. We appreciate that presentation. Dr. Deaton now would like to make a few comments, I believe.
Yeah, just to conclude here, I want to thank everyone for hanging in there today. This is a long day. I know the State Board has some more work to do. The fatigue factor sets in after a while, but I appreciate everyone hanging in there. Drive to 55 is an all-hands-on-deck task, and it has to be attacked at the K-12 higher ed, workforce, and labor levels. And it's exciting to work with y'all on those issues, and we appreciate the work you've done with us today, and we look forward to this meeting in the future. So, Mr. Chairman, that's all I have.
Thank you. Anyone else have a comment they'd like? Okay. That being the case, the meeting is adjourned. Thanks, everyone.
Let me know when you want to do that.
Yes, sir.
We'll be